While people talk about legendary pedal companies, names like Boss or MXR or Electronics, or let's say TC Electronics, usually come up pretty quickly. There was another company that for a while seemed to be on every serious player's pedal board. A company from Denmark that built boutique pedals before boutique pedals became mainstream. A company known for exceptional build quality, premium prices, and a reputation for making some of the best sounding effects money could buy. And yet today, you barely hear anyone talking about them anymore. The name of this company is TREX. So welcome to Bang for the Buck, the series where we look at guitar gear that used to cost serious money, used to be highly respected, and today can be found for a fraction of its original price. The vanishing of TREX is strange because when you look at the used market, many of their products are well respected and kind of still affordable, sometimes ridiculously affordable compared to what you expect from them. So what happened? How did one of the most respected boutique builders of the 2000s become one of the most overlooked brands in modern guitar gear? And if there's one category that really explains why people respected TREX back then, it's probably their drive pedals. Now, I gotta admit something, I'm generally not a huge fan of red style pedals. There's often this certain harshness in the upper frequencies and the grainy character that just isn't what I'm usually looking for, which makes it even stranger that one of my favorite distortion pedals of all time is a red inspired pedal. The first generation of the Mud Honey. I found this pedal in a music store in my hometown and bought it because the salesman told me that it is the better sounding pedal to buy. The other one was a tube screamer, by the way. And back then I didn't know shit about pedals. I just wanted more gain on my Behringer amp. Imagine boosting a Behringer amp with a Mud Honey. Years later I found the Mud Honey in a box in my basement. And I was like, huh, a boutique red. I think I'm going to sell it, but let's give it a first try. So I expected exactly what I would expect from a red style pedal, and then it didn't do that at all. Instead, it sounded warm, not muddy, even if it's called Mud Honey, you know. Not dark, just warm in a really musical way. The gain structure had this little nice progression where you could move from a crunchy rhythm sound into a heavier territory without suddenly hitting a wall of distortion. What impressed me most though is how responsive it felt. Roll back on with the volume on the guitar and it reacts, change your picking attack and it reacts. It doesn't feel like an effect that sits on top of your sound, it feels like part of the sound. The Alberta, on the other hand, is a great example of the same philosophy. On paper, it's just another tube screamer style overdrive in a market that's already full of tube screamer style overdrives. But somehow TREX managed to give it its own personality. The same thing can be said about many of their drive pedals, whether you're looking at the Muller or the Dr. Swamp or the Bloody Mary. Even if I don't have one, from what I saw and what I heard, they all feel like they were designed by people who cared more about how a pedal feels under your fingers than how impressive it looked on a spec sheet. And I think that's one of the reasons why TREX drive pedals should still be relevant today. But as good as the drive pedals were, they weren't really the products that built the legend of TREX. The reputation was largely built by their delay pedals. So now, unlike Mud Honey, I don't have years of personal experience with a replica. So before making any claims, I spent some time digging through old reviews and forums discussions and feedbacks from players who have actually owned one of these pedals for years. And what struck me was how remarkably consistent the feedback was. No matter whether I was looking at old reviews or users' comments or forum discussions, people kept coming back to the same words: warm, musical, and natural. Now, once I did get the impression that people or players loved these pedals because they were packed with features. Quite the opposite though. Most people seem to love them because of how they sounded. Some reviewers described the replica as the best delay they ever played. Others call it the most natural sounding delay pedal they ever came across. That's interesting because if you look at the delay market today, most discussions resolve around features, not sound. And when people talk about the replica, they rarely start at the spec sheet side, you know. One comment I kept seeing in different forms was that the pedal sounded bigger than many of its competitors. Bigger and wider and more three-dimensional. And whether that comes from the voicing, the filtering, or some secret Danish magic, I honestly can't tell you. What I can tell you is that the reputation wasn't built by marketing alone. When you see the same compliments repeated over a period of nearly 20 years, there's usually something to it. And the replica wasn't the only delay TREX made. The Reptile offered a more affordable alternative, while products like the Replicator took the company into the world of tape echoes. But all of them seem to follow the same philosophy. So I went online and bought one. Still, it isn't here, but I'm definitely making a review when it arrives. So 150 is not really a low price bang for the buck, but if it holds what it promises, it's well invested 150 euros. Back in the day, if you want a serious pedalboard supply or pedalboard power supply, there weren't nearly as many options as there are today. Listen to me, sound like a complete boomer. Modern players have things like the Strymon Zuma or the Shox DC7, countless other choices. But during the late 2000s and early 2010s, one of the biggest names on pedalboards was Voodoo Lab. And right in the same conversation said TREX, especially the Fuel Tank Junior and the Fuel Tank Chameleon. Looking through forum discussions and all the reviews, it's actually surprising how often these units get mentioned alongside the Voodoo Lab products as the direct competitors. A lot of players praise the Fuel Tank units for one simple reason: they just work. They still do. Sure, all the Fuel Tank models are not as flexible as some competing units nowadays, but compared to like Voodoo Lab ISO 5, some users pointed out limitations regarding output regulation or power delivery for particularly demanding pedals. And if you compare them to modern power supplies like the Strymon Zuma or the Shox DC, they obviously start to show their age, but they still work and are reliable. And if you search and have a specific goal in mind and the outputs match with the planned pedalboard, you mustn't buy something new. So after spending some time looking into TREX again, I honestly think the company is a bit more of a victim of its own era. They built great pedals, they built great delays, they built reliable power supplies, and yet they never became one of those brands that stayed in the spotlight. Maybe because they didn't expand aggressively enough, they weren't chasing every trend, they just kept making solid gear that players seemed to genuinely enjoy using. And that's probably what surprised me the most while researching for this video. I expected to find a company that had been forgotten because the products weren't relevant anymore, but instead I found a company whose products are still respected by people. The Mod Honey still sounds great. People still speak incredibly highly of the replica, and there are probably fuel tanks powering pedalboards right now, which, if you think about it, is probably the highest compliment you can give gear. So if you never looked at TREX before, if you've completely forgot about them, maybe it's worth spending a few minutes on the used market, because there's still a surprising amount of really good gear carrying around that name on the pedal. So I hope you liked that episode of Bang for the Buck. Please make sure to like and to subscribe and hype the video to help it grow a little bit more and help the channel. And with that, I'll catch you in the next hangout